Section 7.1 is on percents. A percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. So if you think of the word percent, cent, a lot of times like you think of there's 100 cents in a dollar, 100 years in a century. So cent usually has to do with 100, and here it does again as well. So if we look at this example, 48 out of 100 turtle eggs in a nest produce hatchlings. What percent of the eggs in the nest produce hatchlings? Well, it's 48 out of 100, and a number out of 100 is a percent. So 48 out of 100 would mean 48%. So these examples, they want us to write these as percents. So 7 out of 10. In this case, we don't have a number out of 100. We want to get it to 100. So to get to 100, we could multiply 10 times 10. And then to get an equivalent fraction, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do the same thing to the numerator. So if we multiply the denominator by 10, we also have to multiply the numerator by 10. So if we do that, 7 times 10 would be 70. That's 70 out of 100, which is 70%. So make sure when you're doing these problems, you get it to be a denominator of 100 before you decide what your percent is. We look at number 2, similar idea. Our denominator is not 100. In this case, it's bigger than 100. So what we can do though actually is divide. If you do 100 divided by 10, that would give you, 1,000 divided by 10, that would give you 100. And then if you divide 87 by 10, that would be 8 7/10, or 8.7. 8.7 out of 100 would be 8.7%. If you're doing a problem and you're not sure what you need to divide by to get it to 100, like in this case we had 1,000, what you could do is just do 1,000 divided by 100, and you'll get 10, and then that tells you that you would need to divide by 10 to get to 100. We'll look at the next part here. If the second term of a ratio is a factor of 100, multiply both terms to rename as a percent. So similar idea here. Serena took a math test that had 25 questions. She had 18 correct answers. What percent of Serena's answers were correct? So it was 18 out of 25. We want a number out of 100. So if we take 25 times 4, that would give us 100. And then 18 times 4 is 72. So she got 72 out of 100, would be a 72%. And like I mentioned a minute ago, if you don't know what to multiply by, take 100 divided by the denominator. So in this case, if you did 100 divided by 25 is 4, that tells me I need to multiply by 4. So we're going to look at a couple problems here to get some practice with this, renaming as percents. So number 1, we have 9 out of 20. Remember, for a percent, we want it to be a number out of 100. So on this one, to get from 20 to 100, we would have to multiply by 5. And if we do that, 9 times 5 is 45. We've got 45 out of 100, which would be 45%. So on number 2, we've got 7 out of 50. To get it to be a denominator of 100, we would want to multiply by 2. Multiply the numerator by 2 as well, and that would be 14%. Another thing we're going to do here is writing percents as fractions in simplest form. So if you have a percent and you want to write it as a fraction, so percent is a number out of 100, so 35% would be 35 out of 100. Notice here they want this in simplest form. So 35 out of 100, we could reduce both of those by 5, and that would be 7/20, which is all the further we can reduce that. Technically, if you were allowed to use your calculator, you could do 35 divided by 100, and then you could find the simplified fraction. Like on a scientific calculator, maybe you have an F to D function. on a Desmos scientific calculator, if you divided it and then you'd hit the button that kind of looks like this, and then it would change it to a simplified fraction for you. So on number 2, we've got 4%, so that would be 4 out of 100, and that can be reduced down. Those are both divisible by 4, and that would be 1/25. If you don't see they're divisible by 4, you could see they're even and reduce them by 2, and then you'd be able to reduce by 2 again. So number 3, we've got 19.8%. So it's a percent, means we can put it over 100. So 19.8 over 100. The deal is we don't want a decimal in our fraction that's not in simplest form. So to get rid of the decimal here, we would have to multiply by 10 to move our decimal over one spot. And that would be 198 over 1,000. Those will both be divisible by 2. Which would be 99 over 500, and that's as far down as we can go. If you were able to use a calculator, if you just divided 19.8 by 100, you would get 0.198, and then if you change that to a fraction, it would give you the 99/500ths. So if we look at some more examples here, changing the percents to fractions in simplest form, we look at number 7, it's got 25%. So we want that as a fraction in simplest form. So 25% means 25 out of 100. You might be familiar with this one. That's going to reduce to 1/4. If you're not sure, you can do the fraction decimal thing, or you could divide it out and then have it change it over to a fraction. We look at number 10, same directions. Here we have 84% this time. So 84%, it's a percent, so it's a number out of 100, so 84 hundredths. And that is going to be able to be reduced down to 21 over 25. They're both divisible by 4. You could reduce by 2 and then reduce by 2 again, or you could, if you're allowed to use your calculator, you could check it that way. And then number 12, we have 13.5%. So on number 12, 13.5%, we could put as 13.5 over 100. We don't want to keep a decimal in our fraction. So if we multiply both of these by 10, is going to eliminate the decimal. That'd be 135 over 1,000. And then we could try to reduce from there. You might notice they end in a 5 and a 0, so those should be divisible by 5. Which would be 27 over 200, and we're not going to be able to reduce any further than that. Number 13, Jeff won 6 out of the 20 games he played with his sister. What percent of the games played did Jeff win? And just watch on the problems like this. Sometimes they do like a reverse thing on you, and they say what percent did Jeff lose? So just be careful with that. So we have 6 out of 20. So for a percent, we want a number out of 100. So we would want to multiply both of these by 5. And that would be 30 over 100, which means 30%. Always watch the wording on these problems. Sometimes they'll do a reverse thing on you and say, what percent did Jeff lose? So in that case, you could figure out that he won 30%, and then that would mean that he lost 70%. Just subtract it from 100%. Those are called complementary events. So this gives you an idea of how to work with percents. Have a good day.